Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. It is one thing to know what people say you are. It may be more important, though, to know for yourself who you are, where you come from, and the specific parts that make up the sum of your being. In that regard, heritage truly matters, and we are going in-depth on the heritage of Belmont with Dennis McComie, the creator of a project to pay respect to the significance of Belmont on our socio-historical landscape.
One of the remarkable things about Belmont is the freed Africans. And you know, I don't know how we keep missing that in all that we do. So from about 1841, you had lots of freed Africans coming to Trinidad. They were not slaves, they were never enslaved, and that speaks to the African culture that was really new and resurgent in places like Belmont. Think.
And I am sure you straightened up just a bit if you went to Bishop's and you saw Valerie Taylor continuing to impart knowledge. So we say, welcome, Mr. McComie. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Dike? Thank you so much for having me on your in-depth program. Very important program in current affairs.
Our pleasure. And seeing that opening clip, what are some of the things, Mr. McComie, that you think may be most fundamentally misunderstood or unknown about Belmont?
Well, I think it's not a problem. I think the actual reality is that a lot of people don't know very much about the history of Belmont. And with that said, I think they need to also personally discover the history of the place that they're living in. In your case, Gasparillo, you know. Simple things like, you know, how old do you think this place is? When did people come to live here? Who were they? Where were they like? What were they like? Where did they come from? And Belmont goes all the way back. I mean, it goes all the way back to the time of our first peoples who inhabited this entire area. I mean, they were so wealthy and together holistically, and so into the environment and to the Great Spirit that they knew exactly how to live their lives with a very high quality of health. I mean, the grounds of the Red House was one of their cemeteries. Can you believe it? So, you know, it started there. They lived in the hills. And it went all the way down to being called Belmont after many hundreds of years. It's only in the 1808 to 12 that the first governor whoever lived in Belmont made his house on the hill, the Belmont Hill, which is the space of which is now the Trinidad Hilton Conference Center. So there's something else that should be done in that regard. So Belmont is about 215 to 18 to 22 years old, depending on your perspective on things, whether you are a freed African, a freed slave, or a Portuguese, or a shopkeeper, or an English colonial, resenting the fact that all of these people were starting to encroach on this first suburb of the capital city. You can't talk about Belmont unless you talk about Port of Spain, and you cannot talk about Port of Spain unless you talk about Belmont. So everybody has come from Belmont, including you, Dike.
I hear you. But with that in mind, though, and talking about that gap in knowledge, what is the project that you created, and how does it help to address some of these gaps?
Oh my goodness. Well, it all started with an invitation from Father Lawson of the St. Francis RC Church in Belmont, which is a historic site in itself, 120 years old last month, to raise funds to start the restoration, because it was only phase one of the restoration that we had to promote, you know. But I told him that we couldn't just talk about getting money for a church. We had to, you know, in order to get the parishioners and the members of the community really mobilized to creatively appreciate their heritage and acknowledge the value and significance of all of this and the history of all of this, we had to talk about the area in which this national heritage site was located. And that's when I started to do my research over the last 3 or 4 years. Always loved Belmont, because I was born in England, but I came to live in Belmont at the age of 13 months. So I'm a Belmontian. I've assumed the status of private citizen and Belmontian. So Belmont is a fabulous place. It is called Belmont by the governor who went and lived in the General Hilton and Conference Center. And it was called Freetown, Freeland, Freedom Hills. Belmont Valley Road was Freedom Hills. Freetown was Freelands, because that's exactly what happened. People went and squatted, and that's why we have narrow lanes. We have most shops, the most parlors, the most churches, the most cemeteries per square mile than any other part of Trinidad and Tobago, and it's only 41 acres. More schools, per square, whatever it is, and it's remarkable. And of course, the diversity of people who have endeavored over 300 or 400 years to make Belmont what it is. So when you hear this nonsense about, oh, Belmont is a dangerous place, well, the world is a dangerous place. The general health and stability of the natural world we depend on are threatened. The pandemic is just one of the signals. What we have to understand is that we need to stop, take a deep breath, figure out what is valuable in our lives, and one by one, every day at a time, sweet Jesus, let us effectively communicate with our family members and figure out how to move one step forward in faith and in hope. And this is in regard to everything: economics, finance, the environment, health, the works.
But in terms of moving forward, Mr. McComie, and taking those steps forward, and I really appreciate the fact that you're saying that the area needs to be recognized more than one spot, which is the church within that area. Because tell me where you're from, and I can tell you already, start to tell you some things about yourself. But what are some of those points that you are looking forward to achieving incrementally, those steps that you're putting one foot in front of the other, the project that you've created? What are your main points of focus?
My main points of focus, I mean, there's a wish list of many small, medium, and large things. But our big focus is to get the moral, political, and community will to recognize Belmont's history, to educate our young people as to the significance of their past. I think if they understand how valuable their past is, they will now feel more empowered to check their vision for the future and be able to have dreams that will take them to better places than we find ourselves at the moment. So we want government, if we want to call them that, to recognize the Belmont area, or 41 acres, and this is with consideration for Gonzales and Laventel afterwards, or simultaneously, would be fine with me, to be a heritage district of Port of Spain and derive all of the benefits that come from recognizing it for such a valuable thing. But the most important project we want to get done now, after we've started the push for the restoration of St. Francis, is to have corner of Belmont Circular Road and the Savannah, which is the entrance to this beautiful district, rehabilitated by the Ministry of Works.
We will speak directly to that issue when we return from this break. So stay with us. We're speaking with Dennis McComie. We come back with more.
Why do they tell people and each other that you are the original sailor man?
But that is not the truth. You had Jim Hardin with Mischievous, and then you had another fellow by the name of Cecil Jobs. After I worked a couple of years with Jim Hardin, and had another fellow by the name of Cecil Jobs.
Right.
He was helping Jim too, and he decided to bring out his own band. And with the sailor, you make your suit this year, and you have it for years.
Yes, it's the same suit. You just augment it if you want or whatever.
Different decorations and different headpiece.
Wow.
And according to the saying, now you're good to go.
I know everything must change, but I still love the old time days.
The influx of people from the French-speaking, black people from the French-speaking islands, a lot of them would have settled in the Duke Street area, Duncan Duke Street. So that would have been the ancestral home of old Carnival. But by the time the carnival becomes a little more commercial in the 40s and 50s and becomes the national festival that we knew it to be by the 60s, Belmont is where you find the most steel bands. I think I saw a list of steel bands in Belmont and it probably had about 40. Every corner had a steel band.
And that kind of ties into what you were saying a little earlier, Mr. McComie. Welcome back. We are going in depth on Belmont and the heritage and the way that heritage matches. So looking at the term Sankofa, going back, getting what you need to successfully go forward. So looking at those areas being listed out and saying that there are more churches, there are more schools, there are more this and that per square footage, there is an area that you started to describe that needs some rehabilitation. Can you pick back up on that point, please, Mr. McComie?
Yes, well, it's actually the official entrance to Belmont. You know, as soon as you pass the Sparrow roundabout, after you pass number 1 Lady Young Road, which is the only building, which is the Trinidad Hilton, you come across Belmont Circular Road. Now, it's fabled, well, it's not only fabled, it's history that the largest silk cotton tree ever in the history of Trinidad and Tobago was right there. And I remember that until I was a very young person. And it's no longer there. But for the last 30 years, actually since post-coup, the Ministry of Works and its partners, including UDICOT, have used that corner as a dumping ground right around the Queen's Park Savannah. Now, with the 60th anniversary of independence coming up in August, and no word on how we are going to creatively or culturally celebrate this milestone, I would like to ask them all, because they have not answered any of my letters on behalf of the people of Belmont, to please do something about that and signal to us that you all really care about the environment and sustainability and the new normal, which will have to import the young people who are still not tainted by the corruption that has impacted our daily lives for 60 years. Environment, let us get rid of plastic. Let us stop putting poison and pollutants in water. Let us be respectful of each other. And let us start simply by breathing, calming ourselves, because you cannot accomplish anything when you are agitated, and speak. Forget about the burning tires. Go and have a meeting with your family and find out if everybody in that unit is good. And then branch off the community and get it done. We can no longer wait on the politicians and the leaders and the institutions.
And looking at family and community, Mr. McComie, who are some of the members of the project? Because looking at that, those snippets of the videos that we got, those nuggets from Valerie Taylor we see there are also young people involved, and not just as though they're carrying water, they're playing some seminal roles. So who are some of those individuals who are part of this project?
Some of them are leading females, you know, the engineer on board, the architect on board, the heritage consultant on board, all beautiful, distinguished women. And mostly 90% of everybody concerned is a Belmontian or connected to Belmont in some way, and completely pro bono work. I'm talking about years. So we need to, it started really with the parishioners of the St. Francis RC Church, but it has now spread to everybody who has a name associated with Belmont. And we want to thank them all. There are thousands. The diaspora has spread. And the common denominator is that they either lived, were born, or their parents are from Belmont. It's quite remarkable, quite remarkable. I'm so proud of this place.
What are some of those timelines of events? Well, the timeline of events, mileposts along that timeline in this search for truth and beauty. What are some of the things that have happened thus far, and what are some of the things that you want to take place with the project in the near future?
You mean on a personal level or for Belmont?
No, this is with regard to the project. So what, where are things moving? Is it with regard to the St. Francis RC Church? Are there other things? What is happening?
Yes, there was a very successful first phase, and that was to get things moving after a very protracted length of time. You know, excuses from people that, you know, they didn't have money at that time and stuff. But, you know, you cannot quantify an acceptance of heritage I am still celebrating the fact that after, I think it was 18 years, we brought the Red House back, the seat of Parliament. We have to get real about what we value. And heritage is important. Heritage is everything, Heritage is what we believe our identity is. Heritage is how community and people value the sacredness of life and the value of peace. Heritage are the rules that we agree to do together to keep life, civilized. So we also are custodians of the environment.
And on that note, we want to thank you so much, Mr. McComie, in the sense that helping us to remember what is the main thing and letting the main thing be the main thing with regard to seeking truth and beauty and how we can do it in a space such as Belmont. So we want to thank you once more for your work. And on behalf of the entire news team, I'm Dike Rostant. This has been In Depth with me. Thank you so much for joining us.
See the children of this world with all your heart and soul. Now is the time.
I have been
Her brother all your life.
all my life and have no choice but to be taken in by her passion for history and what is Belmont, and be a very proud Belmontonian.
It will stick in my mind. You can't love something that you don't know.
Yes.
So I think what really needs to happen now is that we need to take something like this to every community so that it really is something like living, so that I can say that I love my heritage, and one way to love it is to know it. So I just borrow from you. We just have to know it now.
Love each other as I have loved you. That is where they have to begin. Live like a family that we were accustomed to.